All right. So yesterday, a lot of you, not all of you, but many of you were able to make some guesses. I kind of challenged you to go around your homes and to find three food items that you thought had the most energy in them. And I watched them. You posted in Flipgrid. And since we had such a limited number of people that did that, I decided to compensate everybody that played the game. Congratulations. But you guys did a good job. Many of you finding not only the food stuff, but I was actually more interested in your explanations. And I heard a lot of people uh, mentioning and bringing up some good points. So I just want to real quickly talk about progress and develop our understanding of this energy transfer. Because remember, you're eating food so that you can get energy from that. So we're going to try to learn in the next several days how to understand that, how to measure that. Because if we can understand that, then we know how energy can move around in a food web. Remember, it's all about ecology. So I want to use a kind of a cheesy example here. Like, what if I were to give you just in my home, I did what you guys did and I found a food sample. Is there a way that we could actually test that to see if it has energy in it? And remember, we had mentioned yesterday about wood and coal and oil and that we burn those things and that releases heat and energy. So what about if we took a snack food and tried to burn that? So what about if I were to make a setup like this and I got a gross, disgusting cheese ball? My kids were eating junk food yesterday. That's the only reason I thought of this. And I took a cheese ball. Do you think it'd be possible if I could actually burn that? Because remember, if it's like wood and oil, if it were to burn, that would probably be a pretty good sign, an indicator that it had energy in that. So if I were to do that, I mean, I wish I could show you, but it's a lot easier. People have done it before. If we were to find that, so I'm going to open up this really quick, just not even show you the whole thing, but somebody essentially doing what we were trying to do here. And if we were to do that. So this individual, he's doing the same thing. He's got a match here, and he's holding that. This is a cheese doodle or a cheese jack, and you can see he lit that thing on fire, and it's 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 burning. It's starting to. You can see it's catching on fire. You got the flame here, so that thing is turning black and charring, but it's burning. It's giving off energy. So that's a definitely is a sign that that thing has stored energy in that. So now that we know that there's a way to do that, we're going to progress a little bit, and I want to see if we're able to carry this idea a little bit farther. So, I mean, obviously, we know that this thing had energy in it because it burned. If you held your hand over the top of that, you'd feel the heat. That thing's giving off heat. It's giving off energy. Um, so that brings us to our next point. What we're going to focus on is there some kind of way that we could capture that? Because if you remember, we had talked about, we mentioned real briefly this idea of respiration in organisms, and that's the nerdy way. This aerobic cellular respiration is when an organism like you or a gull eating brine shrimp or a coyote eating uh, the gull, when we eat them, we take the food and we break it down chemically. We're not actually burning it in a fire, but we break it down chemically. We digest it. Uh, and that releases the energy in those bonds. And most often it's in carbohydrates, sugars. Remember where those sugars came from. But really, when we say we're burning the food, we're breaking it down. All we're doing is breaking apart chemical bonds, holding it together, and that releases the energy. And then we can use the energy to do whatever the heck we want, right? The energy from that is what lets us do everything: running, jumping, digesting food, running away from predators, mating, having babies. Anything that is a life process requires energy. So we want to start to deal and develop with that over the next several days in doing that. Because remember, where these come from, if we hit rewind, ultimately that energy, if we trace it back, right, it comes from the producers. So why did the producers make those carbohydrates in the first place? It wasn't so that another animal could come along and eat them. Remember, those carbohydrates are actually there for energy for the producer. The producers use them. Producers don't eat food, they make their own food. And then they can use that food as energy. So everybody's using these carbohydrates these chemicals, these molecules as energy. Right? So, what we want to do, and we're going to focus on here, is that what if there was a way where we could like burn that cheesy doodle cheese puff, but we could actually capture the energy so we could measure it. And what we're going to do, the process is something called calorimetry. We're measuring calories. It's a fancy way for saying, really, ultimately, what about if we took that cheese ball, and what we're going to be doing, this is a really simple version. There are much more scientific ones. What about if we put a little foil container here, a little, literally, it's a little cup, and we filled that with water. And if we burn that cheese doodle, it would burn like in the video, and that would heat that water, right? That would actually heat up the water and it would change the temperature of the water, just like putting a pot of water on a stove. So, what if we burned that cheese doodle, or whatever we want to call that, jacks, cheese puffs, whatever? What about if we burn that thing? They look and taste like styrofoam anyway. If we burn that and we put a thermometer in here, we could actually measure how much heat went into that water. As the water heats up, that we can use that as a measurement. So we're going to be doing something like this over the next several days. We'll be doing it in a little more scientific manner, but the principle, really, this idea of calorimetry, measuring the calories, is if we burn the food and we measure how much that water temperature goes up, that's going to tell us how much energy is in that food. So that's our introduction. I'm going to ask you to go and play around with a virtual setup here that we'll do multiple times, but that's going to get us started for now. We know what calories, or excuse me, we've mentioned calories before. Right now, our goal is to how can we measure? Yesterday, you guessed and you tried to figure it out. You did a good job. Now we're going to start to look at how can we measure the energy in that food. All right. That we're going to